China's debt has risen tremendously in the past few years. Many news articles have been highlighting how this may put China in an economic danger. Here's a graph on the total debt of China as compared to other major economies. Data from the International Monetary Fund's Global Debt Monitor. Here, you can see that China's total debt is massive. It is more than the average of advanced economies, and even more than the United States itself. This is quite problematic. That's because China isn't a developed economy yet, and having this high of a debt can pose serious economic risks. Unlike advanced economies such as the United States or Japan, which have well-developed financial systems, global reserve currencies, and strong institutional frameworks to manage high debt levels, China faces structural challenges that could exacerbate the issue. So, this led some people to believe that there might be a chance that China's debt problem could lead it to what happened to Greece. In case you're not aware of what happened to Greece, back in 2010, Greece faced a severe debt crisis that nearly led to its exit from the Eurozone. The country had accumulated massive public debt, which was exacerbated by years of excessive government spending, tax evasion, and economic mismanagement. When the global financial crisis hit, Greece was unable to service its debt, forcing it to seek bailouts from the European Union and the International Monetary Fund. The result was a period of extreme austerity, economic contraction, and political turmoil. Here's a graph on Greece's nominal GDP, data from the World Bank. Here you can see that since the 2008 global financial crisis, the economy of Greece hasn't really recovered at all. In 2008, it hit a nominal GDP of over $351 billion. But as of the latest year available for 2023, it is just at $243 billion. The economic impact that Greece has gone through because of massive public debt has led many to believe that maybe China might be next. Can China's massive total debt cause an economic recession for China? Well, to understand whether that can happen, we must first understand the story behind Greece's economic problems. Greece's debt crisis didn't happen overnight. For decades, Greece had run persistent budget deficits, and its public debt gradually climbed. In the early 2000s, Greece experienced relatively robust growth, partly buoyed by the promise of joining the Eurozone. However, joining the Euro meant that Greece gave up control over its monetary policy, making it impossible to devalue its currency in times of stress. When the global financial crisis hit in 2008, investors suddenly became nervous about Greece's high deficits and mounting debt. For context, here's Greece's government budget since 2000. Here you can see that in every single year since the start of the 21st century until 2015, Greece had recorded budget deficits. What that simply means is that its government had been spending more money than they collected. They were basically spending money on infrastructures, social services, and all sorts of things that the government runs. And at the same time, they weren't collecting enough money, either through taxes or any other means. Hence, if we take a look at Greece's general government debt to GDP, we get to see that it has risen fast and big. Here you can see that even in the year 2000, Greece already had a fairly large general government debt to GDP of more than 100%. This is a fairly large size. For instance, even if we include Japan to the list, we get to see that Greece's government debt to GDP was nearly as high as Japan. It is important to know that Japan has also run substantial budget deficits, which caused its debt to balloon. But we'll leave the case for Japan for now and focus on China. So, as Greece's public debt ballooned to unimaginary levels, it caused panic amongst investors when the 2008 global financial crisis hit. But what's more worrying is the fact that by 2009, it was revealed that the Greek government had been underreporting its deficits and debt levels for many years. Once the true numbers emerged, Greece was seen as having a debt-to-GDP ratio that was unsustainable, in some estimates exceeding 170% of GDP at the crisis's peak. This case of Greece may somewhat parallel China's case, doesn't it? Some critics out there claim that China has been underreporting some of its economic data points. Its annual GDP growth, which saw significant 5% in the year 2024, was challenged by several institutions. But what may not actually be true is the fact that China's debt isn't really that big, at least not on the government side. Here's a graph on China's general government debt to GDP as compared to Greece. Here you can see that during the 2008 global financial crisis, China didn't really have substantial debts to GDP. Neither is China's debt to GDP even that big as of the latest year available. But how can this happen, you ask? Didn't we just see earlier that China's debt was much more than the United States and even more than the average of advanced economies? Well, the dataset that we saw earlier, which is often used in news reporting, is the total debt. That total debt includes debt from not just the government, but also from the private institutions like corporations and households. The data that we see here right now only includes the government, which is what caused the Greece economic crisis during the 2008 global financial crisis. Therefore, even though China's debt is big in total, it's still small as compared to what Greece saw during the 2008 global crisis. So, we can't really see the crisis that happened in Greece to happen in China as well. But let's take a step back here and examine the future problems that China may face. Here's a graph on the general government gross debt to GDP of China, data from the IMF. Here, you can see that there are projections until 2029 made by the IMF. They project that by 2029, the general government gross debt to GDP of China will actually grow to over 111.1%. This still isn't as big as what Greece had during the 2008 crisis, but as things stand, this might still pose a threat to China's overall economic stability. So, would this increase in debt in the future actually be a Greece-like problem? Well, the answer is, of course, no again. The reason why Greece saw a debt crisis is because much of its debt is held by foreign investors. This is because Greece is in the Eurozone, its debt is denominated in euros, and it cannot adjust its monetary policy, for example through devaluation, to ease the burden. This also constrains their fiscal policies. The country was forced to implement austerity measures dictated by external creditors, IMF and European institutions, which further contracted the economy. China, on the other hand, has its debt primarily be based domestically. That basically means that China's debt is owned mostly by Chinese banks, institutions, and citizens, rather than foreign investors. This distinction is crucial because it allows China far more control over its financial system than Greece ever had. Since most of China's debt is in yuan, the government and the central bank, People's Bank of China, or PBOC, have multiple tools at their disposal to manage it. Here's a graph on the external debt of China. This external debt refers to foreign debt, which is debt owed to foreign creditors, like, for instance, the United States. This is very small. As you can see from the latest data available, the gross external debt position of China is just $2.5 trillion. This figure is very small if we compare it to the domestic debt of China. Furthermore, it is also important to know that after the crisis occurred, Greece's bailout was administered by the IMF, the European Commission, and the European Central Bank. But these came with severe austerity measures that worsened the economic downturn. What austerity meant was that its government had to cut public spending, reduce pensions, raise taxes, and implement strict financial reforms to meet the demands of its creditors. These austerity measures, while intended to restore fiscal discipline, ended up contracting the economy further, leading to a prolonged recession, high unemployment, and social unrest. China, on the other hand, if it were to face a crisis like Greece, it would likely not be constrained by external forces. It is highly doubtful that China's government would allow outside forces. Furthermore, they may cut spending, but it may not be as substantial as what occurred in Greece. And again, this is because China has control of its currency. Unlike Greece, which was locked into the euro and could not independently adjust its monetary policy, China can devalue the yuan, adjust interest rates, inject liquidity into the financial system, and direct state banks to restructure debt to prevent a financial collapse. So, when we compare Greece's debt crisis with China's debt problem, it becomes clear that although both cases involve high levels of borrowing, the underlying dynamics are very different. But anyway, do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.